it gets complex very quick, and this is probably not optimal for a podcast, but at the end of the day, how do you orient and harmonize a group of unique individuals all toward a common purpose? It's the most complex, most challenging thing in the entire world. And you learn so much. And what else are you going to do if you want to actually grow and scale your business? You kind of have no choice.
Welcome, everyone. It's Chris G here, back again with another Titan's Tale. Today, I have Alan Lazaros with us, and Alan is actually from Boston, or Greater Boston, I guess. And I've been there a couple times. That's a wonderful place to be. But anyway, that's a side note. Today, we're going to discuss leadership and how leadership will eventually end up in the success and fulfillment. Excuse me. So, everybody, please welcome Alan. Alan, how you doing today?
I am good. I had an interview earlier today. I've got momentum in my day. I also you gave me the time to go and grab some more caffeine, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Alan, before we get going here, if you would.
So the short version is I grew up in a tough environment regarding my father passed away when I was 2.
Hmm.
He was 28 in a car accident. I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. My stepfather left our family when I was 14 years old. In hindsight, I didn't understand this at the time, but that was the hardest year of my life. I've since done some therapy in my 30s and really reflected and rewatched the movie of my own life over and over and over again. And the reason 14 was so hard is because he left. I haven't seen him or my any of his family since. That same time, my sister moved out with her older boyfriend, and then at that same time, my mom got in a fight with my aunt Sandy, her sister, and my aunt sort of ostracized us from her side of the family. And to this day, I've only seen one person from my mother's side of the family too. So in hindsight, this was not
Hmm.
clear to me at the time. I definitely created some abandonment challenges, and so my trauma response to that was to become an achiever. It was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. Straight A's through high school, computer engineering degree in college, master's in business, and just in corporate, I rose a lot and job hopped a lot, soul searched a lot, and I was very successful. I was broke in high school and in college because when my stepdad left, my my mom he took 90% of the income with him. So he got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog, but I went from upper middle class with my stepdad around to basically I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low. And so, yeah, I just decided being wealthy was the answer, how to take care of my family. And then I did very well in corporate. And then I got in my own car accident at 26. And again, this is the very short version.
I hear you.
But at 26, I got in a tough car accident and physically I was okay. Luckily, I was driving a really, really, really safe car. And this was definitely not a fender bender. This was a very bad car accident, but I was physically okay. The airbags did deploy. But that was sort of the second chance my dad never got because my dad died when he was 28 in a car accident. I've seen pictures of his car, and the pictures of my car don't look very different. So for me, that was my quarter life sort of existential crisis. And that's when I started to really reflect on my childhood and uh, what was driving me and my self improvement. And before that, so the best way I can describe it now is before 26, I was very professionally developed. I was very achievement oriented. I was very improvement oriented, but I wasn't self improvement oriented. I wasn't personal growth focused. I wasn't looking inward as much. And then I flipped the
That-
script and I
yeah.
started. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then I flipped the script and I started doing all the self improvement work and the fulfillment work. So I was successful and not fulfilled. And then I went all the way past broke, became unsuccessful, but I was really fulfilled, happy, healthy, productive, that kind of thing. And so uh, then eventually here I am 9 years later. So that was 26. I'm 35 now. And now I can authentically say, fortunately, that I want my future to be an amplified version of what it already is. And so now I have these sort of 4 buckets, which is the first one is unsuccessful and unfulfilled. A lot of people find themselves there. When I was really young, I was definitely unsuccessful and unfulfilled. Then eventually I became successful, but deeply unfulfilled. Then I got in the car accident and then I flipped the script and I became very fulfilled, but I wasn't successful. I liquidated all my assets. I went past broke starting my own company. I know a lot of your listeners can probably relate to that.
Mhm.
And then eventually, probably 2, 3, maybe 4 years ago, I started to be both successful and fulfilled. And now I can say that authentically. And so now that's what I help people with is I help them really reinvent themselves if they are not fulfilled or reinvent their businesses if they are not successful.
Let's go back when you were 14, and we're gonna talk about leadership, obviously, and the success being successful and fulfilled. You were self-motivated, obviously. You didn't have any mentor anymore. Your stepfather passed away, and you're always out. I know you were 2 when your biological father passed away. When did your stepfather come into the play? A couple years later?
Right, almost right away. So I was 2.5 when my father passed away, and then my
Mhm.
stepdad came into the picture when from 3 to 14.
Got you. And was he considered your leader, basically? Did you learn from I mean, was he I'm assuming he's a good father, don't know why he left, but was he your mentor in a way?
No, no,
No?
I didn't. It's interesting. I didn't particularly like him, and we didn't particularly get along. It always felt to me like I was kind of a nuisance. We weren't his kids, my sister and I, and
Mhm.
it felt like there wasn't a huge relationship there. Yeah,
Did that drive you? Or
I think.
what
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, I mean, you're you had to make decisions, and you didn't have anybody prodding you, it doesn't sound like. I was fortunate enough to have my dad and mom push me into places that I didn't feel comfortable in, but once I got there, but it didn't sound like you had that background or that support.
Yeah.
So were you self-supported or what motivated you?
Well, so one lesson that I've got, and I've since given this to my mom, and by no means do I don't think my mom and stepdad did a great job in a lot of regards.
Mhm,
There is one thing I think my mom did a really good job of, and I have told her this. The best lesson I ever got, I think I was like 7 or 8, maybe even younger, to be honest.
mhm.
My mom sat me down and she said, "Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. I'm gonna love you either way. But if you decide to be a CEO and aim for the top and aim high, you can wake up one day and just decide to be a farmer, but it doesn't work the other way around." And so she said, "Aim high and you'll have choices." One time I told that story and a farmer reached out very upset with me. It's like, listen, she was just trying to explain it. Farmers work so hard. Right? I'm not,
I
it
live
is
in a
what it is.
farming community, and there's very
Yeah.
successful
Yeah.
farmers. Tell me no
Yeah.
tell you
Yeah.
no
There's a lot of successful
but
farmers.
I
Yeah.
know what you're getting at,
Yeah,
so
and so that was the way she described it, and she said, "If you aim high, you'll have choices." And the truth is, that's the best lesson ever. I mean, it's just true. Now, here's the caveat. You have to have drive and self-belief, and I
mhm,
think a lot of my drive came from pain. I when my stepdad left, I I looked at my past and there was pain, and I looked at my present and there was pain, and I looked at my future and I saw nothing but pain if I didn't do something about it. And so there's something called an ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, and there's a lot of research on this. But essentially, if you have a high ACE score, had a very adverse childhood, you some people respond with achievement and drive and fight to be better, and some people end up drugs, alcohol, poor choices, that kind of thing. I did
mhm.
both. I had an alcohol problem for a while for sure. I haven't drank in 5 years now, and I often say it took me 5 years to quit drinking, and then it's been almost 5 now. But like for some reason, my trauma response was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. And honestly, that actually hasn't changed much. That's still kind of my trauma response, to be honest, when things don't go well.
So, it almost to a point at 14 and in your earlier years, you're unsuccessful and unfulfilled in your mind, and then you went to the extreme of successful but unfulfilled.
Mhm.
What did that look like? I mean, how 'cause then you flip, because at some point you decide, well, maybe success is the problem, and you flip the other direction,
Mhm.
right? What
Yeah.
that what do you think, or what was going through your head?
Yeah, so the successful and or the unsuccessful and unfulfilled, I was a cart kid and a busboy at a golf
Yeah.
course, and it was definitely not enjoyable, and I wasn't successful, and so that was a really dark time. That was actually around when my stepdad left, actually.
Mm,
Um, then I got I did straight A's in high school, got to college, got my bachelor's, got my master's, and then I went into corporate. And I had some internships in between. And 21st century computer engineer, it, it isn't surprising in hindsight why I did well, because in the 21st century, computer engineers are extremely sought after, and it's supply and demand. I mean, there aren't enough of us. So
Gotcha.
that, and yeah, I mean, every company needs IT and all that.
Yep. Exactly.
So I did very well. What did that look like? It looked like I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, and then eventually ended up at like 180 a year,
Mhm.
thousand per year. And
And this is all in Massachusetts?
yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Yep.
yep. I did live in LA for a very short time,
Mhm.
but I came back home, family stuff. And so, anyways, I worked for a bunch of different companies. So I worked for iRobot, I worked for Sensata Technologies, which used to be Texas Instruments. I worked for a company called Oz Development. I worked for a company called Lens Americas. These are all tech companies. And then I eventually landed at a company called Cognex. Cognex sells industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities all across the world. And it's really machine vision. So this camera right here, imagine water bottles going down a line and it's making sure that the cap is on right and everything's measured properly and all that.
Mhm.
And so my territory, so I did inside sales engineer team and then I did outside sales engineering. And my territory was Vermont, Connecticut, and Western Massachusetts. And essentially, I recognized that I was doing very well. This was really good, but I wasn't fulfilled. And after my car accident at 26, I was still working at Cognex. And I started to realize that this isn't what I want to do with my life. But at that point, I had already paid off $84,000 worth of college debt in a single year back in 2014. I had a bunch of money in Vanguard for stocks and index funds,
Mhm.
S&P 500, and then just other stocks tech companies that I believed would win. And so I was doing very well. And I didn't have kids. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a mortgage. My rent was $500 because I split it. We lived on a lake, my girlfriend and I. And it was a really nice place too. It's small, but it was nice, and I didn't have a lot of bills, and I bought a 2004 Volkswagen Passat for $5,000 cash because I was so used to living so frugal. When my stepdad left, we had to live so frugal. My mom
Mhm.
traded in her BMW, sold her BMW for a little 2005 Honda Civic and all that kind of stuff. So,
That's a good well, I say it's a good thing. It's a it's a good experience to know understand.
yes, it is. Yeah.
I'm not saying I want anybody to do that,
Yeah.
but it's just I didn't grow up rich, but I didn't grow up poor either. And my grandmother's a huge influence, but she lived through the Great Depression, and
Yeah.
you hear all them stories, and it's just you accept what you have, and if you still want more, that's great, but be happy where you're at.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the fulfillment part that you're gonna talk about here later, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. But, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so the you mentioned it built a lot of character and it built a lot of grit when my stepdad left because when he was around, I playfully refer to 3 to 14 as boats and BS. I mean, motorcycles, snowmobiles, we had a yacht, we
The
had
big
apartment
stuff.
buildings,
Yeah.
we had ski trips and all. And by the way, this is the 90s. I mean, come on.
Mhm.
Everybody was winning in the 90s. Not everybody. So please don't.
No, I
But the economy was really good in the 90s, dot com
mhm,
bubble and all that. And so they hung out with other people who did really well, and we would go on vacation all the time and all that kind of stuff. And after my stepdad left, it was really the economy wasn't as good, and my mom's income was low, and I had to really grow up. And it's important to not be entitled and spoiled. And I think in hindsight, I kind of was a little bit when it comes to the finance side. Definitely not when it comes to love and
the love and,
yeah,
cares
caregiving and
and
that kinda yeah,
yeah,
not spoiled whatsoever in that. I can't even go near that with a 10-foot pole on a public medium. But what I would say is financially, it was very important for me to learn that lesson young because
mhm,
now I don't it's easy to keep expenses low when you don't need a lavish lifestyle. And I'm very grateful. I mean, I live in a really nice place. My girlfriend and I, we drive a Tesla and I'm very grateful. and we're doing very well now, but it's rooted in suffering, and it's rooted in life is supposed to be hard, and you can make it meaningful, and you got to stay optimistic in the long run, but in the short run you better stay humble, and you better work your face off because you are in trouble if you don't. And I think that I inherited that through just a tough childhood.
Sometimes, and we talk about entrepreneurs and how they finance their businesses at start out and talk bootstrapping, or even just being an employee and investing if that's what you want to do. You live below your means, take the extra money and put it aside, or
Yep.
invest it in the business or whatever it is, and grow that business. Whatever your goals are at the end, that's great. Whether it be get out of your corporate life, get out of your job, whatever it is. But it means that taking the money you have, living, using as little as possible to put it where you need to grow and get to your goal, right?
100%. Earn more, spend less, invest the difference intelligently. That's the three fundamentals we teach it at our company. And again, we're not necessarily financial advisors or anything like that, but there are
Oh, here, no,
fundamentals.
that was not
Yeah,
advice.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just a
But
philosophy,
but
put
it
it
is
that way.
important. Yeah, it's important to earn. That is the three main things. Learn how to earn more money by becoming
Mhm.
more valuable and adding more value, and then optimize your expenses to make sure you're minimizing them within reason,
Sure.
and then invest the difference as intelligently as you possibly can, minus a little cushion. And I mean, really, that is finance in a nutshell. And I'm a business coach, so I work really closely with the finances of many individual businesses and
Mhm.
individuals, really. So if you don't have those fundamentals, yeah, I'll just say it, your future's not bright. If you're and what's the opposite? Spend more than you earn, get into debt, get in trouble. Like, and we've all been there to some extent. And you learn that lesson over and over again in some ways. And it's very, very important. I think humility is the most important thing when it comes to money. And then modesty when it comes to, maybe not modesty in a negative way, but like, do you really need to fly first class right now? Do you really need to put on that show on Instagram? Do you really need that new car? And again, a lot of people don't like that because it's less fun. And in the 21st century, when everyone wants brand new everything, um, we bootstrapped. Kevin and I, our business, we bootstrapped from the very beginning, and we've we've made it 9 years, 7 years actually. My first business was 9 years ago, and then him and I have been business partners for 7 years. And I think business is about staying power. I think it's who can survive the longest. And survival means what? Because here's the thing: the only way to thrive long term is the compound effect. It's to compound. And so you have to survive in the short term in order to thrive long term. And so
Mhm.
if you focus on survival in the short term and stay optimistic for the long term, you're actually in a really good position business wise. And then you build a real brand that people can get their head around. And then there's credibility that comes from lasting in business because most businesses don't. And then you iteratively improve and add more value and all that. So yeah, for the entrepreneurs out there, don't be afraid of it being a survival game for the first couple of years. It really is. I mean, that's what it is in the first couple of years. It's just do what you got to do to survive within ethical and moral grounds and stay aligned, and then make sure you don't sell yourself or like sell out, and stay true to whatever the purpose of the company is. Stay true to your core values and the core values of the company, and do what you have to do to stay pessimistic short term and then optimistic long term.
Before I go into my next phase of this discussion, I want to mention what you just I have a couple mentors in the past that have told me. So if you're bootstrapping or but you really believe in your business, I mean, make sure your business makes sense. It's making money or can make money.
Yeah.
But if you're needing some funds, go get a job. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with getting a part-time job to get extra money to live on while you're
Yep.
building your business.
100%. That shows
Oh,
humility.
another version is that don't be afraid. And I've had to do this myself. Don't be afraid to take on jobs you don't really want because it's cash flow.
Yep.
Just do it. Try to make it as most profitable as percentage wise as possible. Hope it doesn't take all your time,
Yeah.
but sometimes cash flow is king. I mean, if you don't
Yeah.
have the cash, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately that's the way it is. So, well, Did I trigger
Yeah.
something here?
Well,
Go ahead.
I have a principle that I think will help people that I got really very wrong, honestly. I always say you need, and this is new in the last couple of years, you need 10% of goal gross. 10% of goal gross. What that means in business, and this is my rule for my business owners. I have 24 people on my roster. The youngest is 16, the oldest is 63. Everywhere from, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel to I've been in business for decades and I'm a multimillionaire. And I say you need 10% of goal gross. So if your goal for the year is 100K,
Mhm.
you need at least 10,000 in the bank. If your goal for the year is half a million, 500K, you need at least 50K in the bank. If your goal is a million, you need 100K in the bank. And the reason why is because trying to get to 1 million requires making mistakes that cost money. And
If you
so
have the money, you can afford the mistake.
exactly. And that's
Gotcha.
one of the biggest mistakes Kevin and I made is we didn't have enough cash on hand because we were overly optimistic. And it's not because we were stupid with the money. We just invested a lot in the future. People say, well, if you could go to Vegas and put $1 in and make 10 back, how often would you play? No, no, no. You want to know what it is in real life? You put $1 in, you get punched in the face 6 times, and you get $10 5 years later. So you got to be very careful with how much you invest. I was overly optimistic in hindsight, and Kevin and I need to stay very humble to stay in business because payroll is crazy. I mean, we have a
Mhm.
22-person team. The expenses cannot ever exceed the worst month that you have.
Yeah.
So if we have a big month and we make 40 grand in a month, that's great and that's awesome and we've been there and that's awesome. I think our best quarter was like 120, something like that.
Mhm.
So far. And that's
We're
great.
talking profit, right?
Yeah, no, no,
Yeah, yeah.
no. Gross.
Sales.
Gross.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know
gross.
what you
Yeah, yeah,
alright.
no
Okay.
worries.
Sure.
Yeah, so gross. Now, here's the thing, and that's great for a podcast. That's
Mhm.
very strong. For a business, not so great. For a
The
podcast, that's really good.
podcast. Alright.
Yeah, exactly.
Woohoo, I'm waiting.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's all industry specific. But anyways, so uh, we got cocky a little bit, and
Mm.
we invested in lifestyle. We invested in team. We invested in tools. We got new microphone. We got and that's good. You have to invest in the future. You have to, but you can't overinvest in the future because if you do, and then you have a down month, and then another down month, uh-oh, right? Uh-oh, we can't. So you got to keep enough cash on hand. That is so important. But you can't keep too much cash on hand because then you're just wasting money.
True.
It's just sitting there not doing anything, right? So I say
And
10% of
inflation
goal
means
grows.
yeah, that we
Yep.
get on that too. So
Yep.
I wanna alright, so you were successful but unfulfilled. So I'm assuming at some point you decided, well, this is not really what I want. So you went the other direction and you got fulfilled, but then unsuccessful. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I quit my corporate career and I started my own company. It was called
Mhm.
Alan Lazaros LLC. And the tagline was what you'll never learn in school, but desperately need to know. And from what I wanted to do I wanted to bring personal development to the school systems. I wanted to bring self-improvement to the masses. And I'm still on that mission in many regards, but it's been very different than I thought. And by the way, my goal was to speak at schools with that tagline.
Oh, I know. I tried something that, and well, I learned that not all the masses need what you and I need to say.
Yeah, yeah, apparently not. Nor you know what they don't
Or
they
one.
do need it, they don't want it. That's the difference.
There you go.
They don't want it,
That's
and they
better
certainly
said.
aren't willing to
Yes,
pay for it, right?
absolutely.
But yeah, so anyways, I became a
Mm,
fitness model, fitness coach, fitness competitor because that was more lucrative, and I was super passionate about fitness. I mean, I neglected my health a lot in my mid-20s in my corporate career,
mhm.
and I was drinking too much and too often. I was 160 pounds skinny fat, and I was just not a healthy man. I wasn't vibrant and healthy to the extent that I wanted to be. I was on the
Yeah,
road a lot, so I ate a lot of fast food and all that. And so after my car accident, I quit corporate and I just went all in on self-improvement, particularly fitness. And I started to be a fitness competitor, fitness coach, fitness model. I did 42 fitness photo shoots and then eventually the fitness coaching started to really ramp up and I was doing social media and I had a bunch of fitness clients. And then eventually we started the podcast and I started to realize that fitness is a passion, but it's not my only passion. And then slowly over time, I started to go. So I did fitness coaching. then I did mindset coaching, then I did peak performance coaching. I did a little bit of like life coaching, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then I did business consulting for a while. And then eventually I landed on business coach because over my coaching career for the last 7 years, I've started to really hone in on what I'm not only because here's the Venn diagram. Imagine three circles. You have what you really adore and what's fulfilling. That's number one. Number two is what people actually want and need. And that's an and, not an or. Want and need. And then you have what you can actually, what makes good money. And you kind of have to find the center point of those three things. If it's not fulfilling, you're not going to be able to sustain it long term for the compound effect.
Hmm.
If people don't want and need it, you're not going to get customers or clients. And if people aren't willing to pay for it, you're going to get customers and clients, but you're not going to be able to charge much. And then you're in trouble because you can't really scale that very well.
Right.
And so over my coaching career, I've tried to hone in on those three things. And for me, business coaching is where I've really landed of and for those of you who for not those of you, but on my roster, some people, well, technically I'm not a business owner yet. I say, well, then consider me a success coach until we do start your business. So, like my youngest is 16. He's starting a YouTube channel. He doesn't have a business entity yet, but he's going to be a business owner. He aspires to be a business owner, and so
That's awesome.
um, yeah, it is. It is, and I wish that I had started that young too. But I also understand that that's going to come with some challenges because anyone who thinks entrepreneurship is easy lies about other stuff too.
Yeah. I just, and yeah, and it's not easy. It can be a lot of fun, but it ain't easy.
Yeah, hardest thing in the world, in my opinion.
So you are not successful, as I'm assuming is what you're talking about. So how'd you get to the balance? Is that over just 7 years of just paying attention?
Yeah, I would say we started to get successful. So pre-COVID, Kevin and I, we had a studio in person. We were starting to get success. We both coached for free at first. I mean, that was before we had what we have now. So now we have Next Level University as the main podcast. It's about
Hmm.
success, fulfillment, and self-improvement. Then he
Hmm.
has a podcast called Podcast Growth University, which is about growing your podcast. And then I have something I'm creating called Business Growth University. So we have something called listeners, longers, and business owners. So listeners are people who want to learn from us. Longers are people who want to build their own podcasts and their own communities. And then business owners are people with real skin in the game who want to scale it and grow it and monetize it. And so we kind of help all of those people. He's the podcast coach. I'm the business coach. And some podcasters want to start a business. Some business owners want to start a podcast. So it works. But ultimately, we used to just be podcasters. And we realized very quickly that you're not going to make a ton of money unless you learn how to build a real business underneath that.
Right.
And so then we did that. And then we became eventually successful and fulfilled because what fulfills us is self improvement, success, and fulfillment and helping people get better and getting better ourselves. What is profitable is business coaching, podcast production. We have a social media agency within our company, all that kind of stuff. So we do social media for people, we do video production for people, we do podcast production for people. We and we do it at a very competitive price point and we're very effective and efficient with our team and we have a 22-person team, but in the beginning we did it all ourselves. And then we slowly started to do what we did for NLU, our podcast, we started to do for clients. And then we got better at it, got better at it, got better at it, got more effective, more efficient. We can lower the price, get more clients. And so that's really what we do now. And so we have 45 podcasts that we produce. I coach 24 individuals, business owners, some crossover. And then we have 15 people's social media that we do, including myself and Kev.
Hmm.
Um, and then we do other various things. Like we've got a monthly meetup we do every month. We have a book club. We've got an app, habit tracking app, and stuff like that. So, but a lot of those things are kind of coasting because right now we're focused more on the profitable stuff.
When you bring a person on part of your team, being a leader, and you're bootstrapping, do you talk to them about that stuff, or how do you build your team, and how do you communicate with them?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that. So uh, we have a virtual team,
Hmm.
22 people. the way that I break it down is sort of patriots and mercenaries. So patriots are fighting for the cause, mercenaries are fighting for the money. Uh, so we have core team members and we have freelancers.
Okay.
The core team members, there's 11 of us right now.
Mhm.
And then there's a lot of freelancers. And so the way that I've broken it down is you've got the chief officers. So you've got Kevin and myself. So I'm CEO/CFO. Kevin is CSO, Chief Sales Officer. Christina is Chief Operations Officer. And then we have directors. So we have 21 departments. We also have a charity called Next Level Hope Foundation. And then there's a director of each department. And the directors and most the core team, a lot of them. So I have one person named Amy who directs 4 departments or 5. So she's doing like a lot.
Mhm.
And in hindsight, I kind of made a mistake. We built a $1 billion business in infrastructure and then tried to grow into it. When in reality, I think in hindsight, what I would have done better is build more incrementally.
Yeah.
And $1 billion business is probably coming off wrong, but like we built the business model that is for decades. So 21 departments, that's excessive for a small company. And so in hindsight, what I would have done if I could go back is I would have built it more incrementally.
Sure.
But anyways, because we've had to scale back, put departments in coast mode, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But again, hindsight's 2020, right? So the way in which we organize the runway, I call it the runway. How does the team interact? How does it all work? We don't meet in person. We don't have a headquarters. Everyone's global. I've got one in Spain. We've got a bunch in the Philippines. We've got one in Pakistan. We've got several in Canada, and then I think we have one in the west coast of the U.S. That kind of thing. And so, how do we keep this train running, and how do we keep everyone working in unison? And this is a leadership conversation. And the first answer is it's the hardest thing in the entire world. The second answer is an infrastructure runway. So our runway is we have a department meeting every other week for every department with the director and the team that works within that department.
Mhm.
We also have a team huddle every other week where we have what's called a GIP score, a growth, impact, and profitability score. And essentially, it's every department, the purpose of every department, and then we rate it from 0 to 10 each biweekly. And then we do a most important win, most important improvement. On the department meetings, we have 3 metrics for each department that matter, and then those roll up to the GIP score. And then I coach the core team to make sure that everyone's on point and optimized in their own life too. The way we do this is we use Google Sheets. We also use WhatsApp is our main communication because it's
Mhm.
free for
Sure.
global people, right? So, and each department has its own WhatsApp group, and the correct team members are in each WhatsApp group, and so it's actually quite alarmingly complex. But I've tried to keep it as simple as humanly possible,
Yeah.
and it's actually working really well. So Kevin and Ron work really well together. Ron runs the Philippines team. So it's leading leaders who lead other leaders. And there's a sort of top down pouring in, but I never use boss, I never use manager, I never use employee or staff. I say team and I say leader. And those are the terms you'll always hear me use. And yes, I'm the CEO, so I'm ultimately responsible, but we have something called a DRI on our team, which is directly responsible individual. So I have Brandon, he's the directly responsible individual for book club. And then I'm sort of the co-pilot and he's the pilot. And so I'm running book club, the actual meetings, but he's the one who's in charge of the metrics and making sure that the digital asset gets sent out and all that kind of stuff. So it gets complex very quick. And this is probably not optimal for a podcast, but at the end of the day, how do you orient and harmonize a group of unique individuals all toward a common purpose? It's the most complex, most challenging thing in the entire world. And you learn so much. And what else are you going to do if you want to actually grow and scale your business? You kind of have no choice.
It keeps overhead down in a way. You don't have a
Yeah.
building. Well, it's very
Very expensive. Yeah.
it's very expensive, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but if you had all those people in one location, and that'd be more expensive.
Way more. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, it would be impossible. It would be impossible for us in this space
To charge what you
to
currently
ch
charge.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep. Because
Yeah.
and that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. They say, "Well, when you start your own company, you don't have a boss." And that's not true. Your customers and your clients
Mhm.
are your boss in a way. And so we can't just ask our clients for more money. And so we can't just pay everyone whatever they want, right? So it's this interesting thing. You have revenue coming in from clients and customers, and
Mhm.
then you have cash on hand that pools, and then you know what fruit you're putting that toward. Persons, places, things, and
Right.
ideas, team, tools, training, equipment, all that kind of stuff. And so at the end of the day, you can't do everything. This is what I'll share real quick. I call it a 3D plan. It's super simple, but it's really hard to implement. Okay. And everything in life is simple. Like you want to lose weight, eat less, and exercise more. It's simple. It's just really hard to do. Okay. Simple is not, keep things simple. Everything is simple fundamentals. It's just really hard to do them. And it's even harder to do them consistently. So the 3D plan is very simple, but it's really hard to do. And if you're a business owner, this is my honest opinion. I don't think you'll succeed if you don't do this. The old me would have been too naive and be like, "Oh yeah, you'll succeed and you can do it and all that." I don't do that anymore. That's not actually going to happen. Most businesses do fail, and it's for a reason. Okay, so number 1 is delete. If you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, you kind of have no choice with all the love, but you have to delete things from your life that are not relevant to the success of your business. So for me, I'm really only going to be 3 things in life. Number 1 is CEO. Number 2 is husband. Number 3 is father. I've already talked to Emilia. We're not married yet, but we're intending. And I'm not really going to get very good at much else. And I kind of had to realize that. I had to give up snowboarding. I gave up basketball, except for occasionally I'll play. But we all only have so much time. You sleep 8 hours a day, you have 16 left. And you really do have to delete most of the things outside of alignment with your business's success if you are a business owner, if you really want to be successful.
And
And it's
sometimes that's friends.
that's been the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
That's been the hardest part. A lot of times, so I have so many friends upset with me
Mhm.
uh, because back in college and high school, I had corporate friends and high school friends and college friends, and now I really don't. Right, my closest relationships are my team members, my
Yep.
clients, and that's the way it needs to be, unfortunately. Okay. And fortunately, too, in many ways. Okay.
Sure.
So you have to delete all the persons, places, things, and ideas that are not aligned with your business's success or your personal fulfillment. And I
Mhm.
know that that's hard. And I know that's easy to say and not easy to do. Number 2 is delegate. What are the things that still need to get done that are critical for your business success? And how do you delegate them to the right people? And then here's the problem: delegation is brutal at first. The reason people delegate is they don't have time. Guess what takes more time? Delegation. You delegate and then it takes more time that month. It's like it feels like mopping the floor instead of turning off the faucet. It's brutal at first. So you delegate because you don't have time, and guess
Yeah.
what takes time? Delegation. And it doesn't pay off until later. So Laura's my executive admin. She's awesome, but the transition didn't save me any time that month. It actually
Oh.
cost me time, right?
Mhm.
And money. So it costs
Mhm.
time and money. And then it pays dividends later. So you gotta do it long before you're ready.
I know.
Um, but you also need to make sure you have the cash available to do it. Okay.
Training, all that good stuff. It's
Exactly.
oh my
Training. And that
gosh.
training never ends. There is no
Mhm.
ending to that. Okay. Laura
Okay.
sent an email 2 days ago. I messaged her and I said, "Hey, can we do this differently?" The training never ends. And she's like, "I'm so sorry, my bad." I said, "Listen, no worries. It
It's
makes
not yeah.
right. It
It's
is
just
what it is. Yeah, it doesn't have to be
learn from it,
perfect."
do it this way next time.
Yeah, exactly. And that never ends. And that's why you have to take all the stuff you used to do and turn it into leadership, which then is delegate. So delete everything that's not aligned, delegate everything you can that still needs to get done. And then the third piece is double down. Double
Mm,
down on the things that are the most fulfilling and the most profitable. And that's an and, not an or. If you only double down on the things that are most fulfilling, that are not profitable, you are in so much trouble. And I made that mistake. You have to double down on the things that are the most profitable and fulfilling. Profitable first. And so Kevin and I have been consistently, messily doing this. We delete everything that's not aligned with the business success, except for obviously wife, that kind of thing. And I don't have a wife yet, but yeah. And then we delegate effectively, which takes time, and then we double down on our thing. And if you consist, and you have to do that forever. So you delete, delegate, double down, delete, delegate, double down, delete, delegate, double down. I use Taylor Swift as an example because she's famous and everyone knows her. She only does 3 things: singing, songwriting, guitar, and dancing. That's it. That's 4 things. But everything else she deleted, delegated, or doubled, and then doubled down on those 3 things. If you take away guitar, you take away dancing, and you take away singing, Taylor Swift couldn't be Taylor Swift.
that's true.
99% of her success and impact comes down to those 3 things. But she has a team and a team of teams around her making sure she stays focused on those 3 things. And that has taken decades, 15, 16, 17, almost 18 years now, if you
Hmm.
study her career. So that's what all of us have to learn how to do. And then people see these really successful people. They say, well, what do you do? The truth is, not much, but I do my thing really, really well, really, really, really consistently, frequency, intensity, density, duration. And so for me, it's coaching, speaking, podcasting, training, and writing. And those are the things I'm trying really hard to double down on. And it's mostly coaching, training, and podcasting.
Awesome. Well, I can't think of a better way to finish our podcast with that 3Ds, and it is very impactful. I wrote them down here because it is, well, it is the truth, and you got to do it. So, thank you very much. If people wanted to contact you, where would they get hold of you at?
So if this was helpful, I'm very grateful. Thank you for having me. I don't take it
Hmm.
lightly. I really appreciate it. Where can you get a hold of me? We have a website called nextleveluniverse.com, spelt just like it sounds, nextleveluniverse.com. The podcast is actually Next Level University.
Okay.
And the person who has that URL is charging way too much money. So we decided to do nextleveluniverse.com. So if you check out the website, you'll see everything we've got. We've got blog, we've got book club. We do a monthly meetup every month. We've got our own journal called Dreamliner. We've got all kinds of stuff on there. And then the podcast, it's 1% self-improvement, holistic, in your pocket every single day from anywhere on the planet, completely free. And it's really the mentor, the male role model in your pocket that we never had. Kevin didn't grow up with a father either. So him and I both, grew up without fathers. And so we wanted to be the male role model we never had. Ironically, most of our listeners are actually female.
That's all right.
Although I do think that's shifting as him and I become more courageous. And yeah, so that's where you can reach out. You can also email me, alan@nextleveluniverse.com. If you do, please just provide context because I get a lot of spam.
Sure.
And if you want to be more successful, more fulfilled, or you want to start, grow, or scale a business, I will help you in any way that I can.
And if you're driving or at a place where you cannot take any notes, you can always go to titanstail.com and find Alan. He'll have his own page as far as a guest in our directory. Alan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. It was an honor. And thank you.